Okay, well, I'm so excited to be here with you, Maureen, and to share your story with everybody out in the world. I think there's
Mhm.
a lot of people wondering what is happening there in Israel, what's happening there in the Middle East in general, and having great concern, like everybody does, for all the people there suffering. And it's rare that we have the opportunity to help in the crisis, in the trauma. A lot of times I'm helping people on the other side of it. They've come home from war, especially it was when Iraq and Afghanistan was going on. It was they were coming home, they were trying to heal. But I'm really interested in, first of all, letting everybody hear a little bit of your amazing story and how you ended up where you're at. And then, of course, the Warriors program and really diving into trauma informed yoga while living in a traumatized place, right? Like while you're in it. That's something I don't have experience with. So I'm going to turn to you as the expert on this, Maureen, and just see what I can learn, what everybody can learn from, again, your experiences here. And just what an amazing, I just want to say to you, wow, you're a testimony to strength, Maureen. I just want you to know personally what you have meant to me, knowing you're out in the world and you are fighting the proverbial good fight out there and for helping people in need who are in a stress traumatized place with you yourself also coming from that place. And I think that's also unique. So anyway, so people know a little bit about you, Maureen. I'll let you tell a little bit of your story. Where were you on October 7th? Where you ended up and now where are you?
It's so interesting, even hearing you say October 7th, I got like a little bit choked up. Also, thank you for those beautiful words that you say. You're such a hero to me. So it's a pleasure for me to see that I inspire you too. I'm very grateful for you. And I will get to that. I will get to Yoga Fit in a second. It's a lot to unpack.
It is. I know it is. I
Um,
know it is.
but I will just kind of start with like a little background on myself. So I'm Canadian originally. I grew up in Ontario as a dancer, and then I kind of moved into the fitness industry, started to teach yoga, started to get the travel bug. I was 12 years ago working in Club Med in Turks and Caicos when I met my husband, who is Israeli. And he was very patriotic. He was fresh out of the army. And I knew that he always wanted to live in Israel. So, I started visiting over the years because what we hear about Israel is, the country's always in flames, there's always war. So I wanted to see, if I felt safe there, if his family liked me. I'm not Jewish. Is that okay? I really had no idea, other than, the Israel that I learned in Christianity or the Israel that I saw on the news. And I really fell in love with Israel, with the food, with the people. I think their resilience, even now living here in the last 10 months, is outstanding. I'm really blown away by how they can continue every day, especially in the current circumstances. Um, so I started getting into circus, and my husband and I traveled the world for a little bit. And we moved to Israel 6 years ago to a mountaintop. And I was teaching yoga, performing circus,
And
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 actually,
I just want to bring it to people. You are hearing that word right, circus. Which I when I first met Maureen and I was like, wait, say that again. You're in the circus? What do you do? Tell us about it's circus monkeys, right?
yeah, circus
Because I think
monkeys.
that's just so cool and so fun. And yeah, please share what you do because it's so awesome and unique.
So it's funny because, when I would run into old teachers or old friends from my small town, they're like, "What are you doing these days?" And I'm like, "Oh, I'm a circus performer in Israel." And they're like, "What does that
What?
even mean? And how did you get there?"
That's why I had to push pause for a minute. I'm like, I know other people are going, did she say circus?
I
Love
do that
it.
in my yoga intro too. I'm like, and I hang by my toes. Um, so we performed a lot and taught a lot in flying trapeze for years. We worked in Brazil, in Mexico, in the south of Israel, and we worked in a few summer camps in the US doing a lot of teaching. And when we moved here, we did a lot of performing. So we have a structure that we can break down, put in our car, set up in festivals and
Wow.
schools. And And then COVID hits, and we really had to take kind of a turn, because I remember we had 5 shows lined up when the first lockdown happened. And we were like, all of that money, all of that, those connections, that hard work is like, everything is like cross everything off your calendar. And by the way, that's what happens in war too. It's so strange. You could have all these plans and then an attack happens, and you need to come to the realization that what you had planned tomorrow just isn't happening. Everything starts from scratch. So it's really strange to continue to do that throughout the last 4 years. Anyway, so when we moved here and COVID hit, my husband started to make circus equipment, because now all of the gyms were closed. And people couldn't train. So they started to buy structures for their house, hang structures in their yard. So that was a really great pivot. And that's actually a big part of our business now, is that we perform, we do a little bit of teaching, and we make circus equipment. So we've done teacher trainings in Canada, in Germany, in Israel, where we teach people how to teach circus, how to be safe. My husband is very talented with safety and with rigging and with building. He has a lot of information. So people are always, everybody here knows him as the guy that makes circus equipment.
He's the circus advisor.
He's the circus guy. So that's our life. And we have a 2.5-year-old son. I say 2.5, he's almost 3. So my life also shifted when I gave birth, and I started to focus more on teaching yoga, a little bit less performing. And then basically October 5th and 6th, we were finishing up festival season. It was a holiday here in September to October. And we were in the south of Israel, actually. And the chances of things going really wrong for us, it's amazing. We always say we had angels that day, because we were very much in the south. And the hippie in me just kind of felt a call to set up a kind of like a protection space in these specific 2 cities that on October 7th got hit really badly with the infiltration of terrorists and shootings and, really horrific things. So it was so interesting that 24 hours before everything happened, like, we were in those places, and we were invited to stay at a friend's house another night. And then that day I woke up and it was like the ground fell out from under me. I was trying to grasp in real time, like everyone else, what was happening, and also, am I safe? And my friend's reality in the South was completely different. They were locked in their homes, and there was a lot of horrible things that happened that day. And I'm sure if anyone's interested, you can look into that. But a lot of traumatic things, videos. And I think we spoke about that in our first warrior training, was how we can, with technology, also be traumatized from afar, because those things are surfacing on social media. And that was really hard for me in the first few days. I couldn't even look at social media because people were politicizing it so much, forgetting that it's real human suffering on both sides.
Right. And they're still doing that.
Absolutely. And that's why I have such a hard time talking about it on like a wide platform. I just really do my work here in my community, because people can just be so triggered by different things. And so that's where we were on October 7th. We were safe at home, but we had just been in that area. And then we basically had like 5 crazy days where I remember teaching 2 yoga classes here in my community. And the women were so broken, and we cried. And I said, I don't even know how I'm going to teach this, but you showed up and you need it. So here we are. And I tried my best to teach, I think it was supposed to be power yoga. So I did hatha, like really gentle, lots of breath work. I would have loved to have known my warrior stuff before then, but
well, it sounds like you did a pretty good job on intuiting what to do, right? Like you realize that, if you hadn't before with yoga, that it's the nervous system that we're messing with, that we're working with.
Yes.
And so when you have people coming in very dysregulated, and you yourself as a teacher are very dysregulated for obviously very good reasons, then you stand, in that nervous system and make a different decision. Right. That's what yoga says. It's like show up in awareness
Yeah.
and meet the people where they're at who are in front of you. Not what you put on a piece of paper you think you should do what the class is called. Like that would have been ridiculous, right? And I think that's the beautiful thing about yoga is that it meets you in your life where you're at with what you're going through. But in times of crisis, I don't know if we think about it as first aid, mental health first aid, nervous system first aid. We treat wounds and we can do really good job with that. But the thing that's going to create that enduring impact at all levels of being is that a continuous dysregulated nervous system. So I
Mhm.
don't want to kind of jump in on here, but you're bringing up that like something about yoga that I know people know, but I just don't think that we really embrace yoga to that degree of thinking of it as a nervous system first aid. And that's the thing, if we can work with that in those moments of crisis, especially early on in the crisis, then you're going to help mitigate those impacts downstream years from now. So you did a good job, Marie, and I'm going to turn it back over to you because I'm just completely enthralled here. But yeah,
It's a
it brings
great
up big
point.
stuff about yoga.
It's a great point that you bring up, and it's something that I really it's therapy. It's
It is.
self-care, it's self-love.
Yes.
There's so much of this, and this is what I tell the people in my community now, this is what you need now. Make the time for yourself because
Yeah,
we're in the
like if it was
midst
like a
of a
weightlifting
crisis.
class or whatever, I mean, running, you would get off the energy, something else, but there's something really special about yoga that it's a safe space. Like we intentionally, which you did that, or they wouldn't have showed up, Maureen. You had already done that, or they wouldn't have come back to the class during that time. That's where they
Mhm.
came to. It's like we are gathering here, all of our nervous system being dysregulated, and you held space for that.
Yeah, and that's those two classes were extremely hard. And my husband, we offered free juggling lessons for the kids, like anything in those first few days to like for the
Yeah,
adults to
nice.
decompress, to gather, to discuss while the kids were, distracted and not necessarily having to feel that. Of course, they felt our energy, but to give them kind of an outlet. So those two classes really stuck with me, and we were able to get out of Israel within the first 5 days, um, and go home to Canada to visit my parents. We were there for 3 months actually,
Yeah.
but I couldn't get that out of my head. I couldn't get the picture of these women's faces and one of my friends looking at me with tears in her eyes saying, "We're never going to be the same again." And it was like, I kept asking my husband, "How am I going to help? How am I going to go back? How am I going to help? What do we do?" So I needed to renew my personal training certification through CanFit Pro. And every year I go through to see what courses interest me. And I try to do, when I was pregnant, I did one up for pregnancy health. And I kind of go through my stages of life. So I went to this, and all of a sudden I saw Yoga Fit, and the Warrior program popped up. And it's the first time I had actually heard about Yoga Fit. And, we had just left our country, we're artists. And so the money aspect was kind of like, oh no. I told my husband, okay, like I think it's too expensive, but this is really calling to me. And he was like, you know what? If this is calling to you and it's a way you can help, the money will come, the way will come. And he was right. He was very right. Because you came along, Shay. And so yeah, my first Yoga Fit training was in December, and I think back to it, and I think it was my favorite training. And it was the combination of it being my first training, of learning all of the cool shaking, really, understanding the polyvagal theory and the nervous system, you being so fantastic, and the women that were there that held such incredible space for me. I look back and I'm like, I was super traumatized, and I was super unbalanced. And somehow I was able to, sit through and work through those 2 days. And I just felt so held. And I really, all of the warrior trainings were great, but that first one really sticks out to me. And then from there, we checked back in when I was in Israel. You and I had a conversation, and you were so generous to offer such a beautiful gift to allow me to do my 100 hours. And that is really something that I will never forget, because I really couldn't have done it without that. And I believe that, abundance can come through so many things. So we can feel, a part of me felt a little bit like I was in need, But then at the same time, I was like, this is a vessel of abundance that is being gifted to me so that I can give to other people.
Yeah.
And I give so much free yoga. You know, I pay my bills and I know my worth, but I do so much volunteering because I feel that I'm paying it forward from what you've given me, from what Yoga Fit's given me, and just the amazing compassion that so many people showed me in such an insane time. And even now, you know, even now.
I'm so glad to hear that, Maureen, and thank you for saying that. I will remember that, warriors, as well. I've taught a lot online in the last four, going how many years it's been since we went, and definitely many stand out, and but that one particularly, and yeah, you modeled for everybody in that workshop, and since then, you know, this is how strong yogis are. This is how yoga makes us stronger. And it makes us stronger because we are willing to sit in the discomfort and to allow others to hold space for us when we need it. And then now we feel strong enough, and now we're going to go hold space for others. Right. And I think that's really important to encourage those who are doing this work for themselves, is that that's why you have to come and let others hold space for you when you've been through something. It's so difficult for me. And so I kind of like to bring up like kind of things you don't think about as a teacher. We think we always have to be strong, and we always have to, um, well, there's strength in saying, I don't know how I'm going to do this. This has been really challenging, and to trust others to hold that space, and you did. And so thank you, because it's a blessing to be a caregiver and a care receiver both. And so if we don't, and so I always say that, I'm like, listen, at one point in your life, you're going to be a caregiver, right? But also, have you thought about, you also have to be a care receiver, and we're not that good at that. We like to just be the strong and I'm going to get through it. And so that's important, because then you've walked that walk. You know how that feels for other people to come into a space to feel so broken. I don't like that word, but to feel so down, right? To feel so heavy, so energetically, and you know exactly what they need because you've been there. So
Yeah.
Maureen, so I cannot believe it is August. So you've been back in Israel for how long? 5 months?
7 months, I think.
7 months. Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So after we had that conversation, I really hit the ground running. As I was still getting my 100 hours, I felt that, okay, I could wait. The Canadian in me is like, wait until you're fully certified. But I looked around at everyone and I was like, people need to know about
You
this.
can't wait. Yeah, that's right.
People
That's
need
right.
to do it. It needs to happen now.
Yeah.
So, and I tell all the yoga teachers about Yoga Fit. Just today in my yoga class, I was telling a Pilates teacher, she wants to get her yoga certification. I said, you have to do it. Like even if it's not the warriors, I mean, it's really, really incredible. And I think everyone should have the warriors. One of the women that takes my yoga said, every yoga teacher in Israel needs to do the training that you did. She said that. And I was like, I agree, because here we have trauma sensitive yoga. And I know people that teach it, and I know people that do it. And it's very much like a gentle breath work, gentle asanas, doesn't really get into the somatics or, the brain or the shaking that I feel is so paramount to what makes the warrior program.
Yeah.
So I really hit the ground running. I started to volunteer in as many places as I could. Working with different nonprofits. One specifically is just down the mountain, and it is a PTSD farm. So basically they use agriculture. They bring injured soldiers. So soldiers with PTSD, soldiers with physical injuries, and they work with the land and they work with movement. So on certain Memorial Days, Holocaust Memorial Day, the Memorial Day for Fallen Soldiers, I went and I volunteered and I taught a few classes to some injured soldiers. And then I also started working with a nonprofit called Hayal's Angels. Hayal is soldier in Hebrew, and it's an amazing woman. Her name is Tasha. She's from the UK. And as soon as the war started, she started to get different donations. And, first it was just they needed supplies, like army supplies and things like that. And then she started to she's not a therapist, but she got together. She's like the organizer. So she brings Reiki, massage, chiropractors, yoga, and we go to army bases around the country. And we work with the soldiers for like 8 hours. So for me, that was very intense. I think the first day I went, I was in a tank unit. up in the north. And I remember just seeing all of these tanks. You know, I have no military background. I'm like the gentlest little peach Canadian. I'm so like naive with something. So I really hadn't experienced that before. And I remember like I felt my body shaking. I started Ujjayi breath. I felt my body shaking and I said, what did I get myself into? This is crazy, because you have like 100 soldiers, male soldiers, super turned on in their fight or flight, clacking their guns, smoking cigarettes in Hummers, checking you out, whatever, to eating snacks, having a techno party in the corner, like really weird scenarios with tanks. You know, from my mind, that was really strange. And to see them, they looked like buddies meeting up for a soccer game on a Saturday. You know, the way, hey, high-fiving,
Right,
but they
right.
have guns and they're, you know, just getting back from Gaza or whatever it might be. You know, it was just very odd. But always, you know, the soldiers, they want massages, they want chiropractor, they have aches and pains. So I come over and I'm like, hey guys, who wants to do some yoga? And they're like, no,
Right,
no.
right. They're like, yeah, read the room, lady. Like, no.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna sit over here, come on over, have a nap, stretch your body whenever you're ready. So I would spend the first hour by myself on my mat. So I took it, you kind of popped in my head and I said, I'm going to take this as like a bit of a social experiment. And I'm just going to observe what this looks like. What does 5 months in Gaza look like, you know, on these men?
Right, right.
So I started
Yes.
to see, you know, okay, the ones that were super turned on in their fight or flight, you know, that tough guy energy. And I started to see men slouched over, no eye contact. And I started to see little tremors and like all of these things. I was just kind of scanning with a smile, welcoming, but just kind of scanning around to see what does that even look like? Because I had no idea. And then slowly they come, you know, maybe their commander comes, or he just starts chatting with me, or someone has only 10 minutes. So, okay, let's do some breath work or whatever it might be. And then that's amazing, because then the next guy comes and then they start to like open up. And some of them are like, one guy sat down and he was really closed and his hips were really tight. And he said, don't touch me. And in Hebrew, you know, all of this is also in Hebrew. Some of the classes I teach in English. You think transformational language is hard in English?
Well,
That is
I mean, I
something I
don't know
haven't
anything.
seen yet.
Of course, I don't know anything about Hebrew and what kind of like some languages are probably more, I don't hate to use the word harsh, but when I've heard Hebrew, it seems has very kind of,
Yes, it's
harsh
very
tone
harsh
to it.
sounding.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and it's very difficult language, because
Yeah,
past, present, future, masculine, feminine, everything has a different word. So
yeah.
if I teach a group of female
Gosh, that's
soldiers, I
interesting to
need
think
to
with transformational language. I've never thought about that. Yeah.
and
What
my
does that, what
husband,
does that
bless
even
his
look
heart,
like?
he tries to help me with my script in Hebrew. So I'll say, okay, now I want to say we are feeling. And he'll say, okay, well, the easiest is to say to feel. And I say, no, 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 transformational language. I need to say we are feeling, like everything in the now, everything together.
Not
So it's,
future to feel. We are feeling
yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
Right? Like that
And
is
it's not something
wow.
I'm good at. Don't let me fool you. It's not something I'm good at, but
No, but still
I
it's
do
something
try
to
to teach what I
really
can in
ponder.
Hebrew.
Yeah, there's something here
Especially if
that's
they
deep.
don't speak very well English. Like I really want them to feel
Yeah.
welcome still. So I try my best.
Yeah.
But
Oh,
they would say, you know, don't touch me, or they would tell me, you know, just with calm, straight faces, terrible things that they saw. Like it was just so interesting and heartbreaking to see what it does. But I started to feel like, okay, so now my job is, or to be able to prepare them the next time they're sitting somewhere in their uniform of having to, you know, act, or I need to prepare them for coming home from 5 months of that and sleeping with their wife and dealing with their screaming kids. You know,
yeah.
how can I help them to know that you always have control of your breath? You always have control of your experience. You can control how your nervous system reacts. You can create new pathways in the brain. And so every class I teach, because it's such a small country, everyone is affected. Everyone is affected. They know a family of a hostage. They know a soldier that has died. They know
Yeah.
a soldier that is now. They know someone that was, you know, killed in the music festival on October 7th.
Mm,
Everybody is affected.
yeah.
So even if it's not a warrior class, I try to give as much of the breath work, of the massaging of the forehead, the massaging of the lower back, all of the tools. My favorite is Stanley Rosenberg's eye stuff. I love that. And I
Good
do
stuff,
it
yeah.
daily. And I try to give them as much as I can, because even if I don't know it, when I finish the class, someone will be crying and they say, my brother is a soldier and he just died. Or I know, one of my friends is a hostage, or there's a million and one things. My husband is in the army right now. I have no idea where he is because he can't use his phone. So it's like I'm affecting so many things without even knowing it. So I always love going into a class, no matter if it's with soldiers or with civilians or who it's for, because I know that I can help, because everyone is affected. And I end all of my classes, even if it's one person or if it's 10 people, with a collective prayer. And I always pray for peace, for love, for safety, and for healing. And I speak those words with such a deep truth and such a deep feeling that I demand it, because it's enough. These people are 10 months living in trauma. They can't even deal with it yet. Those soldiers are, the therapists are refusing to treat them because the army needs them in fight or flight still. These poor men that have been doing this for 10 months,
Yeah.
and the women that are alone for 10 months, and the children that have to deal with, all of the repercussions of running to a bomb shelter.
Those ripple effects are gonna
When does the
be
healing even begin?
years.
We're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
so in it.
yeah. I
And
disagree
then
with the
you have,
waiting to treat though. And then, I mean, that's a separate thing to talk about.
no, this is really hard, because there's a lot of
It's tough.
soldiers that really want that help and they're being denied that help. And I think
Well,
it's
that's
terrible.
again where yoga comes in as something very different and unique. So talk therapy, in some ways, the model, and I mean, I was trained in it, but the model of care is kind of after the fact, right? It's after the thing has happened, the
Mhm,
injury, right?
mhm,
And that's all of our medical model. It just seems like we're not great at understanding how powerful preventative care is. Um, and like I said, we can help in a very, very real way, help mitigate those things that are going to impact their nervous system. Folks, you go to war, we know you're going to traumatize you.
mhm,
I mean, it's a given. This is why it makes me insane that we train you to use guns and we train you on, follow the checklist, and this is how you work as a team. But what we don't train is your nervous system. And it's the very thing that's going to determine your outcome if you're going to walk out of that thing with PTSD. That's what's going to determine it. The trauma, the events itself don't determine if you're going to get PTSD. They just don't. You can't prove that.
mhm,
They
mhm,
correlate to, of course. And we all get impacted by traumatic events. It's actually your nervous system. And so we can, just like we give you tons of vaccines and shots before we deploy you to a different country, why are we not inoculating your nervous system to give you
mhm.
half a chance at it? Instead, it's like we're seeing a cat declawed out in the woods. Good luck. I hope you survive.
Yeah, we'll deal with
Uh,
it later.
yeah, and we'll deal with it later. And now, what message is that? So
Mhm,
that doesn't. I mean, that's unfortunate. Like, why don't we have, just like we have battlefield medicine? Why do we have battlefield mental health? Like, why don't we, and again, beforehand, that's where I think yoga comes in. I think that's exactly our place in the world. We are more nervous system medicine. All right. I
mhm.
think I'm just making new things up here as I go, but that's why we really have to just take that, like, think about flexibility, just whatever. We are nervous system medicine. And boy, that is just so, and gosh, that's just getting me all worked up over here that these poor people are, again, we're just traumatized and saying, you'll probably be okay, or you're resilient, or no, nobody
Yeah.
is. We've got to work on that. We got to do better. Anyway,
And
so,
then, I mean,
oh,
so I have a really good friend that lives in my community, and she's actually American. And her fiance was fighting in a t-shirt on October 7th, like from the beginning, saw all the terrible things,
mm,
went to fight in Gaza for a while, and she's traumatized from trying to
mm,
hold that for him. He
yes,
will tell her maybe just the surface of what had happened. And she's traumatized because she can't believe that such an evil exists in the world, as most of us can't, to
right.
understand that type of information. So, I work with both of them, but I also work with her in her first understanding that she's traumatized. She's afraid to even go visit home because she's like, I'm going to realize how traumatized I am when I'm in a normal society. Here, you can't go anywhere without seeing pictures of the hostages on schools, in a grocery store, walking, up the road. Someone posted them all the way up our little community. And I understand that we need to remember these people and we need to honor them and we need to, get them back. But at the same time, it's like, when can we heal when we're constantly, there's still people that hear sirens every single day and need to run to a bomb shelter. And then there's civilians in Gaza and Lebanon that don't have those bomb shelters. And they're also running, and I can hold space. I love what you posted yesterday. It was like, I'm gonna muck it up, but you had posted something on your Instagram. Yes, here it is. Perfect. And it said, you can love your people without hating others. And I think that that's something that we really need to remember. Also, you have election season coming up. That just because, we support safety in one place doesn't mean that we can't hold that for other people as well, and we can take away the borders and just see civilians and just see humans and women and children and animals and the earth that we're harming through all of this.
Yes.
And that's something that I also feel passionate about. It breaks my heart to know, that this is happening and that there's, I'm in my cushy house with, running distance from a bomb shelter, and some people don't even have that.
That's hard. That's this isn't just a one-time healing event. That's not how healing works. It's a constant awareness and process. It's, every day there's a million acts of healing that we do. It's through awareness. This is happening, sitting with it, like you said, and then, but I'm sure it's very hard, Maureen. I can imagine, to know there's so many people around you and like you said, great suffering with no resources. And here you have, but that's why we get driven to go out of our house to home to go help, to offer our arms to others and those places of healing. Going back to when you saw the soldiers, and of course they're not going to be like, yeah, let's do a yoga class, right? Where they're in such a different frame of mind, they're in a different nervous system. And yes, I've said this a lot, and I know they recognize it. Like, we need you in fight or flight. We can't afford for you to let your guard down. It's actually unsafe. We need you hyper vigilant to some degree, but we don't need you to the extremes, right? That's when it becomes
we still
really
need you
dangerous.
rested. We still need you regulated.
Yes. And we need you to also have calmness is much stronger than anything else, and ability to come up with sort of novel solutions, to be kind of a creative problem solver, to see things differently. So I'll point that out as well. We need you, yes, on alert, and definitely some sympathetic, but we don't have to take parasympathetic out of the equation. That's the problem, is when parasympathetic nervous system drops out, then what we have is a bunch of reptiles, and they just act on instinct. And yes, some people argue that's all we need them to do. I don't think that's true. When you're talking humans, and you're talking implications for generations here on actions that are done, you need people who are also in their parasympathetic as well as sympathetic. And I think that's what we're looking at.
Clarity.
Yes. All the C words, right? And we talk about courageous, yes, and confident, but not crazy. That's not helping anybody. But I will point out that you brought that, even if you don't, like, okay, 10 minutes here, that's great. A breath practice, just that you knew, that you figured out that you needed to go find a space to just hold, to observe. And then at that point, just like scared animals, right? And we're animals. And I think we're most animal-like. And I mean that in the best way possible, right? When we're scared, you can see that. You don't go rushing up to an animal who's scared, right? They're going to back up or they're going to attack you. And so hold space, let them come to you. Let them be kind of, what's going on over here? Because we aren't doing yoga, we are yoga. So you brought a different energetic experience for their nervous system. And at first it's really different than theirs, I'm sure, just to kind of throw a lot of like concepts out here in philosophy of trauma-informed yoga. It doesn't just look like the psoas shake or ujjayi breath or moving in a rhythmic way. It looks like the teacher the identified teacher, which is you, or the person working in those spaces, or the counselors out there working in spaces, as you're coming in as a regulated person,
Mhm.
yes, you see the discomfort and you're distressed by it, but we have to ourselves be somewhat regulated so that they can come and go and get an energetic feeling of, oh, wait a minute, there's something different going on here. I didn't even know I needed this, right? And then some of them figured out, oh, I need this, right? What Maureen has over here, I just need to be near her. I need to feel that energy. It's different. It feels better, right? We're giving them a novel experience outside the war experience for a little bit. They need that so they can go back in when they have to do what they're told to do, what they're called to do. That's how we make people stronger, in very difficult situations. So I don't know if I said misspoke at all in there, Maureen, but
No, that was great.
yeah,
That was
it looks different than just like teaching poses, right? That's something else is going on here.
very much. And it's also always a question. I mean, I love the idea of giving ourselves so much grace and so many choices and options that Yoga Fit gives, and especially the warriors, like that is really calming to people. I say all the time, we don't need to be picking the hardest pose. Maybe today, just a low tree pose feels the best, you know, and there's something really empowering about letting yourself do a low tree pose and just enjoying that without needing to, you know, bend in half in dancer and prove something to someone. You know, what do we need? What do we need right now? And again, that's why I think it's so therapeutic. And even, I mean, a few months ago, there was a night that Iran sent a lot of missiles to Israel, and that was the most Armageddon like feeling, because on October 7th we were blindsided. We had no idea what was coming. But at midnight that night, they said in 5 hours there's going to be a bunch of missiles and drones arriving in Israel. And I remember my dad sending me a not a trauma-informed text saying, doesn't look very good for you guys at midnight. And I was like, there's nothing I
Mm,
can do. My son is sleeping. There's rockets on the way. So what did I do? I got in my child's pose. I rubbed my head on the floor. You know, I let my body shake. I was like, okay, what do I remember? What are my tools? And I was doing it. My husband was doing it. And it was like, then we could have a conversation before we went to bed about what we were going to do, you know, grab the emergency bag, all the things. But it was like, my first thought was, I know how to reset myself. I know how to handle this. And I just started, and that's before I knew all the I stuff, which I'm like really in love with. But
oh,
so this is really just, even now, you know, we're waiting for some sort of a imminent attack to come to Israel any day and any moment. And so how do I keep myself regulated? Because I'm also a mom, I'm also a wife, I'm a
I was
big
just going to
leader in
ask
my
that, Maureen,
community.
yeah, how are you doing that? I know you've shared, a lot of the tools that you use.
Yeah.
But and I love that, you're really showing to us uh that's what awareness looks like, that you're aware even before it becomes overwhelming that you're going to need these tools, right? You're like, just
Mhm.
like you pack an emergency bag, like, what can we do? We know it's going to happen. It's going to continue to happen as well. So what can we do in advance of that? Can we kind of build up our bank, our resources inside, right? So can we make ourselves stronger before the actual event versus waiting for it to happen and then seeing how we feel? I don't know if that makes any
Yes.
sense.
Yes, absolutely. And unfortunately, you know, we need to do it for our son too, to
Yes, of
explain, you
course.
know, if we hear a loud noise, the siren is really loud, and it's also just traumatizing in itself.
Jarring.
Like, you
Yeah.
know, you hear a car drive by and you're like, everyone stops because you think it's the beginning of one. And it's so interesting what living in this can do, that every morning you wake up, like in the last, you know, week that they're talking about this attack, my husband and I wake up and we're like, we slept the whole night. We didn't need to run to a shelter. Like, that is great.
Right.
Gratitude. How great is that? But
But how long
at
can
the
you
same time,
sustain that sort of, and it's not, you cannot sustain that indefinitely, right? Like you just cannot
and
sustain that
people
high
have
alert
been
indefinitely.
living in this
Yeah.
for so, so long. And you see it everywhere, you know, you see the wear and tear of it. Um, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm taking care of myself. I'm trying to think ahead because I know what triggers me, especially now about the situation. So I try to think ahead to make things easiest. You know, I know if I'm going to be up all night wondering, where the carrier is to put my son in, where is the bag, is, you know, do we have fresh water, whatever. I do it all before, and then I know I can get some rest. And I pray a lot. And I just try to cultivate a feeling of love and of peace, because I know that that can kind of counteract that. You know, we're energy. So if you tell the whole country or the whole world that there's going to be a massive war, people put energy into that. And so maybe you could, you know, say I'm delusional, but I don't consent. I just don't consent to the harming of humans. And I choose to feel protected and calm and loved and in peace. And it's easy for me on the mountain. I know it's not so easy for people, but that's why I feel so passionate about passing these tools along. And other than the Yoga Fit tools, you know, I do a lot of breath work. I heal in water, I sage, I do all those kind of hippy dippy things that I feel, you know, help bring me back to balance, grounding my feet in the earth, spending time with friends, with my son, and just understanding that, you know, we can sit here and wait for rockets to fall on us, or we live life, you know, we continue to live life. And I show my son, and I love it because when he hears a loud noise, there's a training base near us. So sometimes there's like shooting or loud boom. So he always says, Ima, Ima is mom in Hebrew. He says, Ima, big boom. And when I see that he's really scared, I say, but look at my face, you know, look at my face, look at your dad's face, all is well, everything is fine. And maybe we'll, you know, go play with tractors the next boom that we hear. Or it's kind of messed up to think about it, but that's what we have to do also to help him have some tools. And he does breath work. He's almost 3 and he knows to take deep breaths to calm himself. You know, how are we going to move that energy that you're feeling in your body? If it's anger, frustration, fear, let's let it out. And giving space to the kids in the community, like that too. You know, I really try to, like, just any chance I get, teach people how we can stay calm, because it's crazy. It's really crazy.
That's well, you know, we have our workshop, intergenerational and collective trauma, right? So this collective trauma that's happening, we call it, that's the horizontal impact of trauma, and everybody's impacted at all levels. But then there's also the through line, the vertical line of trauma that's going to go forward from here. So the work we do now, the work you're doing now in the collective trauma field, is going to lessen the trajectory of that vertical line forward to generations, to include to your son. So that's why we can't wait. We have to, there's always something we can do now to think, yes, to help us feel better here, to give us greater tools and resources. But, you know, we're also looking ahead. We're looking down the road, right? And we've seen what had the impact of trauma that's not looked at, not, you know, acknowledged, that's not being worked with. When you don't do the work now, it will show up down the road. What does it look like in 6 months? What does it look like in 2 years? What does it look like in 5 years? When the war stops, it doesn't stop. It continues on. And sometimes it gets bigger. And, you know, we saw that with the Holocaust studies, with the unresolved nervous system. We've seen this lots of different instances. I've seen it with Iraq and Afghanistan and the generations to follow. Of course, 9/11. I mean, give me instance. COVID with our kids. I mean, my goodness. So I just want to kind of point out, it's important, yes, today, but for generations to come. So Maureen, thank you for, I know sometimes it feels like you're just, I can only imagine, it feels like, you know, the ship's being overcome with water and you're like, I got one bucket here. Okay. Anybody else want to get a bucket and start?
I know, I'm the only one on the boat going, you guys.
Yeah, I know. I mean, gonna need some help here, people. So if you're listening to this, there is work for all of us to do in all of our communities. Like you said, we're, you know, it's a weird time where, you know, things are happening so far away and yet they feel right here. Right, like you said, because of social media, they're being broadcast real time. Like, and for all of us, and that's a traumatizing world. And of course, yes, like you pointed out, you know, we got a lot of things coming up that are big deals in the world. Like you said, we got 2 wars going on big time in the world. And then we also have in the US, the political trauma, that, as I like to call it, coming up.
So divisive, so very divisive.
So dial it back on the divisiveness if we can. Like you said, you're opposed to suffering. I am too. And like, what can we do? That's what yoga says is we're trying to alleviate suffering. And to do that, we have to acknowledge our own suffering and that we're all suffering and we're all humans who suffer, regardless of how we identify. So Maureen, thank you for really modeling that for me and for everybody who's listening. We all have work to do. So don't delay. Now, Maureen, I know I want to refer people. So Circus Monkeys is on Instagram. I'm friends with you on there. I see it. Really cool stuff. You guys go see what Maureen and her husband do. It's really incredible. And that you're providing people need to have moments of hope and joy in even the darkest of times. And so that you're doing that, because I know your husband's getting ready to go out and do some shows and bring some joy to people that really need it there. So good luck to him. And I'll be thinking of you and your son and keeping you in my prayers for safety and for an end to all of this soon.
Thank you. Thank you, Shay, for everything, really. And I also have a yoga Instagram that I just kind of started for people to refer to. So
Yes.
that is Healing Hearts Yoga. And soon I will be also a certified herbalist. So I will add that as a way to help people as well, and, you know, to support nervous systems, etc. So I just want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are, you know, I'm doing your videos all the time and I love learning all the new things. And I think for anyone out there, you know, we all have our trauma and we all have a nervous system. So to, you know, look into the Warrior program, it's really, really life-changing. And thank you for everything, really.
Thank you, Maureen. Thank you. Yeah, for anybody listening, you can reach me at warrior@yogafit.com. So that's WARRIOR at yogafit.com. Of course, you can go to Yoga Fit for Warriors on Facebook or just reach out to me via email. Also, our Yoga Fit website. Of course, we have all of our amazing workshops on trauma. So again, thank you, Maureen. I'm so grateful that we were able to find this time to be together. And again, it's nice to hear that you're doing well as possible. And so just prayers to you and your family. And we'll just keep on praying that, again, this comes to an end very soon.
Yes, love, love, love. This is what we need. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maureen.